Last Christmas, I was 35 years old. After years away, I thought it was time to reconnect with my family. We gathered at our old Victorian house, filled with creaky floorboards and dust. The decorations felt strange. They seemed frozen in time. While we decorated the Christmas tree, I found a wrinkled card in a drawer. It was addressed to me. The signature was a name I didn't recognize. I thought it was a prank, but a chill ran down my spine. I decided to put it aside and keep decorating. That night, around midnight, I heard a soft humming in the hallway. I thought it was nothing at first. Maybe just the wind. But my heart raced, and I lay awake in bed, listening. The sound had an eerie quality that wouldn't let me sleep. On the second night, I noticed the family photos on the wall looked different. The faces seemed fuzzy, like they shifted when I looked away. I asked my siblings if they noticed, but they laughed it off. I told myself I was imagining things, even as the feeling in my gut grew uneasy. Sleep was hard to come by. The following evening, after everyone else went to bed, I found a porcelain doll on my bedside table. I was sure I hadn't brought it in. It just sat there, staring at me with those cold glassy eyes. I felt a deep chill. I picked it up again and just felt wrong. I set it back down and turned off the light. My heart pounded. I wanted to go home. The next morning, I showed my siblings the doll. They laughed, thinking it was a prank. My heart sank as they didn't understand. That's when they started sharing their own strange experiences. My sister heard the humming too, and my brother mentioned odd noises from the attic that I didn't know what to think anymore. All these stories piled on top of each other made me feel sick. My family laughed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It felt like something sinister was in the house. One night, I walked past the family photo wall again. I stopped to check the pictures. I froze in place. They changed again. I turned to head back to my room, and then I heard a whisper that sent chills down my spine. It said, "You shouldn't be here." I turned around, but no one was there. That I didn't sleep well that night. Fear gripped me like a vice. I felt something heavy in the air. The next day, I decided to gather my siblings. I wanted to confront them, but their laughter drowned my worry. They thought I was just being paranoid. That same night, I lay awake in bed. The humming returned, louder than before. I wanted to scream. I thought I was losing my mind. Then suddenly, it stopped. Just silence. My heart raced, and I felt completely alone. That I glanced at the doll. It was still on the table, staring at me. I felt like it was watching me. My family joked about it, but I felt trapped. I thought, maybe this Christmas, I never belonged here at all. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread, and my dreams hadn't been restful. They were filled with shadows and whispers that twisted in my mind. I quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake anyone, and decided to explore the house. That I crept down the hallway and heard the faintest humming again. My heart raced, but instead of turning back, I followed the sound. It led me to the attic door, slightly ajar, with the creaking of the hinges echoing in the silence. I hesitated for a moment but pushed the door open. The attic was dim and dusty, filled with forgotten relics from my childhood. Old toys, boxes stacked high, and winter decorations I didn't recognize. The humming was louder now, a haunting melody that tugged at my mind. I squinted into the shadows, searching for the source. Then I noticed a wooden trunk tucked away in the corner. I approached it cautiously, drawn in by an inexplicable need to open it. As I knelt down, I could see that it had intricate carvings on its surface, depicting scenes of Christmas long past. A chill ran through me as I reached for the latch. With a small click, I opened the trunk. Inside, I found an assortment of old photographs. They looked like family pictures but different. The people in them wore odd clothing, and their expressions were devoid of joy. The last picture, however, pulled me in. It showed a woman holding a doll, an exact duplicate of the doll I found in my room. That I felt my breath catch in my throat as I held the photo up to the light. The woman's eyes stared back at me, vacant and cold. I dropped it, and it fluttered to the ground, sending a rush of dust into the air. The humming stopped abruptly. Suddenly, I felt the atmosphere shift. A wave of icy air rolled past me. I turned to leave but jolted when I saw something in the corner of my eye. A figure, barely visible, seeming to dissolve into the shadows. My heart raced, and I stumbled back, wanting to run but unable to move. The whispers returned, louder and clearer this time. "You shouldn't be here," they echoed, mirroring the voice I had heard earlier. Panic surged within me as I dashed toward the attic door. I slammed it shut behind me, my breaths coming in rapid bursts as I stumbled down the stairs, desperate to find my siblings. I needed to warn them, to make them understand the growing terror. But they were still joking around in the living room, oblivious to what I'd discovered. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. Maybe I was the only one who could see it, the only one who felt it. But then I noticed something strange again. The porcelain doll wasn't on the table anymore. My stomach dropped. I couldn't shake the sense that whatever I had disturbed in the attic was now closer. Everything felt wrong, and I had to find the doll. I had to know what was happening. As I turned to head back upstairs, I heard the humming once more. Only this time, it was accompanied by soft laughter. And it was coming from behind me. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. The laughter had a sing-song quality, almost playful, but it felt sinister. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from the window to the corners, looking for any sign of movement. Nothing. That I forced myself to take a step forward, curiosity battling my fear. Had one of my siblings come back into the room? I was about to call out, but the humor in the laughter stopped me. It didn't sound like any of them. It was too high-pitched, too eerie. I took another step, moving toward the hallway, but the laughter echoed again, filling the air, wrapping around me like a thin veil that made my skin crawl. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaky. No answer. Just the laughter louder now, as if mocking me. I felt a pull, an urge to see if I could find its source. Maybe if I got closer, I would understand what was happening. Or maybe it would just scare me more. Either way, I had to find that doll. I headed toward the back of the house, where the laughter seemed to drift. As I passed the living room door, I noticed my siblings still playing without a care. They were chatting and laughing. The contrast of their normalcy against my rising panic was unsettling. I hesitated, wanting to shout at them to help, but I feared dragging them into whatever was haunting me. I pressed on, creeping into the darker recesses of the house. The laughter faded as I reached the bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open. My eyes scanned the room. I noticed the mirror, foggy from the morning chill. In the glass, I glimpsed a figure behind me, small and shadowy, just a blur, but when I turned, there was nothing there. That I felt a coldness hit me hard, and suddenly the air felt electric. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted the porcelain doll, resting on the edge of the sink, its beady eyes glinting in the dim light. My breath caught. How did it get here? I approached it slowly, confused and terrified. I remembered how it had vanished from the living room. Instinctively, I reached out to touch it, my fingers brushing against its smooth, cold surface. As I did, a surge of energy rippled through the air, and for a second, I felt warmth radiate from the doll, as if it pulsed in response to my touch. That's when I heard it, a whisper, low and clear, wrapping itself around my heart. "Join us," it said, as if coaxing. I stumbled back, my hand recoiling. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking but firm. The doll seemed to inch closer to me, almost alive. With sudden clarity, I realized that my fear had manifested into something more powerful. I was no longer a mere observer, I was part of this surreal nightmare. Maybe I was the key that could either unlock it or doom myself further into it. The chilling laughter returned, but this time, it wasn't just a sound. It became a cacophony, enveloping me, vibrating through me. I turned to flee, but the bathroom door slammed shut. Panic consumed me as I pounded on the door, the whispers growing louder, "Stay with us. You belong with us." Then everything went dark. I woke up on the bathroom floor, my heart racing and breath quickening. The shadows around me seemed to pulse in time with the fear in my chest. My fingers brushed against the edge of the sink, and I pushed myself up, glancing desperately around the room. The doll was still there, unmoved and unsettling, but the laughter was gone. Instead, a heavy silence filled the air, thick enough to choke on. That I hurriedly shoved the door open, but instead of the bright hallway I expected, I was met with darkness. The rest of the house felt distant, swallowed by shadows as if the very walls were creeping in on me. Panic surged anew. "Hello?" I called, but my voice trembled and faded into nothingness. I stepped out into the corridor, feeling the cool surface of the walls beneath my fingertips. With every step, I felt an unseen weight pressing in on me. Where were my siblings? Hadn't they been in the living room just moments ago? I moved cautiously toward the living room. As I approached, the air turned frigid, and I hesitated at the entrance. The familiar scent of their snacks had disappeared, replaced by something stale and musty. Peeking inside, I found the room empty. No toys sprawled across the floor, no laughter echoing in the corners. "Guys?" I called again. Silence greeted me. The unease grew, crawling up my spine. I stepped inside, searching for any sign of them. But just as I moved deeper into the room, I noticed something out of place, an intricate, delicate snow globe sitting on the coffee table. I was sure I hadn't seen it before. It seemed to take on a life of its own, shining unnaturally bright in the dim light. Inside, a tiny porcelain figure danced across a miniature winter wonderland. I approached it slowly, drawn in despite myself. Something about it felt wrong. A knot twisted in my stomach. That's when I felt a chill brush my neck, like fingers tracing my skin. I turned sharply but found nothing. My breath caught in my throat. I was not alone. "Help!" a tiny voice whispered, barely audible yet undeniably there. It echoed through the empty room, and I spun around, scanning every corner, looking for the source. The feeling of being watched enveloped me, thick and suffocating. Then, I heard it again. Help! This time it was louder, more desperate. I followed the sound, inching toward the staircase. It came from upstairs. I didn't want to go, my mind screamed to run, but the chilling urge to help pushed me forward. I ascended the creaking steps slowly, the wood groaning beneath my weight. At the top, the whisper led me to the door of my siblings' room. It hung slightly ajar, the faintest light flickering from within. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "Is someone in there?" I tried to sound brave, but my voice betrays me, shaking with uncertainty. No response came, the only sound was the fluttering of something inside. I didn't know what awaited me behind that door, but I felt compelled to find out. I reached for the handle, my hand trembling as I twisted it open. The sight inside made me gasp. The room was a complete mess. My siblings' toys were scattered everywhere, and the bed was unmade, sheets tangled as if a struggle had taken place. But what took my breath away was the sight in the center of the room. There, illuminated by a flickering light, stood the snow globe I had seen earlier, larger now, on a small wooden table. Inside, it no longer held just the little dancing figure. Instead, it featured a scene of a family, 2 parents and 2 children, their faces obscured, yet their eyes seemed to follow me. They looked eerily familiar, like distorted copies of my own family. The snowy landscape was replaced with what looked like a dark, twisted forest. I felt my stomach drop. "Hello?" I managed to call, my voice echoing strangely in the chaos of the room. My heart raced as I looked around, nervously waiting for any response. Nothing came, only the disorienting flicker of light from the globe. As I stepped farther inside, I noticed a small trail of glittery footsteps leading toward the bathroom. Kneeling down, I picked out one of the tiny pieces. It shimmered on my fingertips. "What is happening?" I mumbled, glancing around. I was standing in my sibling's room, but it felt like a different world entirely. The voice whispered again, softer this time, "Help." It was coming from the bathroom. I felt a pull toward it, urging me to follow the strange trail. I hesitated, uncertainty gnawing at me. The longer I stayed here, the more the air twisted, filling my head with an eerie heaviness that I took a deep breath and turned on my heels, heading toward the bathroom. The door creaked open like it had a life of its own. The bathroom was dark enough to swallow me whole. As I crossed the threshold, the moment I stepped in, the door slammed behind me, rattling against the frame. My pulse quickened. What was that? I choked out, but it was too late to turn back. The room was illuminated by a pale light now radiating from the snow globe resting on the sink. How did it get here? "No," I whispered, the word slipping out before I knew it. The laughing voice of the doll returned, echoing off the walls, a chilling sound that morphed into a grotesque mix of giggles and cries. Then, everything went dark. The light from the globe extinguished, and I was engulfed in silence, an ominous weight pressing down on me. I stumbled back, trying to reach for the door, panic clawing at my throat. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my arm. I froze, terror racing through me. When the light flickered back on, I gasped. There in the mirror stood a shadowy figure, its features indistinct yet horrifying. I could feel its eyes boring into me, its intentions clear. And then it spoke, a low growl that made my skin crawl. "You shouldn't have come here." I staggered back, heart thrumming violently in my chest. I wanted to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. I turned to flee, but the room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Before I could reach the door, it slammed shut again. I was trapped. "Help!" a voice echoed from the shadows. This time, it was accompanied by a sinister laughter. The room felt alive, and I was at the mercy of whatever haunted it. My breath hitched, and I blinked at the shadowy figure in the mirror. It hadn't moved, yet something about its stillness felt threatening. I forced myself to look away, focusing on the pale glow of the snow globe instead. I couldn't shake the feeling that it held the key to whatever was happening. "Help!" The voice came again, sounding desperate this time. I turned back to the mirror, searching for any sign of who was trapped in there. But all I saw was that shadow, still watching. Heart pounding, I glanced back at the mirror. "Show me!" I yelled, more defiantly than I felt. The whispering escalated, swirling around me like wind. The silhouette flickered, and I felt a wave of cold wash over me, numbing my limbs. I reached out to touch the mirror's surface, hoping to connect with whoever was imprisoned. The instant my fingers made contact, the glass rippled like water. A gasp escaped my lips as I pulled my hand back. The figure in the mirror shifted closer, eyes now glowing faintly. "You must leave," it hissed. "It's not safe." "Safe? What do you mean?" I blurted, my anxiety spiking. "Help!" the voice pleaded again, but this time, it wasn't just an echo. It was coming from the globe. I darted my gaze over, and the scene inside had changed once more. Now, the family was locked in a chilling embrace, their faces morphing into twisted, tortured versions of themselves. I stumbled back, banging into the wall that now felt too close. "What is this?" I nearly shouted. The laughter returned, more intense, seeming to wrap around me like a vine. I could barely think, panic clawing at the edges of my reason. I had to escape. I darted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. I pushed harder, desperation fueling me. "Let me out. Please." Then I heard the faint sound of something sliding across the floor. I turned, just in time to see a tattered doll, its glassy eyes staring blankly at me, arriving from the shadows. The porcelain skin was chipped, and its smile was unsettling, almost mocking. "Not her," the entity in the mirror rasped, urgency creeping into its tone that I glanced back and forth between the doll and the mirror, my mind swirling. "What do you mean?" I shouted. Whatever was happening, I felt like I was standing on shifting ground, unable to grasp what was real. Suddenly, the doll jerked upright, its head twisting at an unnatural angle. "Play with me," it chimed in a sing-song voice that sent chills down my spine. The shadows deepened, and I realized I might be losing my grip on reality. As the mirror's light dimmed again, I could feel the room react, walls closing in, the air growing thicker. I grabbed the doorknob one more time, fear flooding my instincts. The doll giggled, its laughter a cruel echo. And then the door broke free. I pushed it open, stumbling into the hallway beyond. But as I turned back to look at the bathroom, the laughter faded, and the shadowy figure pressed against the glass, hands outstretched, standing in the doorway. I realized that whatever was in that room was far from over. I had only begun to scratch the surface of the nightmare, and now it felt like it was reaching out for me. That's when I noticed something in the corner of my eye, a handprint, small and glittery, on the wall just outside the bathroom. As I moved closer, I knew it wasn't my sibling's mark. That realization made my blood run cold. I blinked at the handprint, my heart racing. The surface sparkled unnaturally, almost as if it were alive. I felt uneasy, as if the walls were closing in on me again. I let out a shaky breath and looked around. The hallway was dim, shadows flickering from the light of the bathroom. I wanted to run, to escape what felt like a nightmare come to life. Then I noticed something else, soft whispering, too faint to understand, but close. I turned my head in the direction it came from, and the sound grew louder, swirling like a ghostly wind. I strained to listen, pressing my ear close to the wall. "Help us!" The voice came clearer now, a chorus of desperate pleas that sent chills racing down my spine. I pulled back, feeling dizzy. I didn't want to hear any more. I needed to get out of here. I staggered away from the bathroom, wondering if it was safe to move. It felt like something was watching me, lurking just out of sight. I headed for the staircase, intending to run to my room and lock the door behind me. Just then, I caught a glimpse of the light from the living room, flickering strangely. The family's old Christmas decorations hung their twinkling lights, and a tree casting shadows in odd shapes. The entire scene felt more like a set from a horror movie than a cozy holiday memory. I felt my pulse quicken. I had to check it out. As I approached, the whispering faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. The light continued to flicker, revealing a deeper darkness lurking behind. I reached for the doorknob, hesitating for just a moment. A knot formed in my stomach, a warning not to open it. But curiosity pulled me forward. I pushed the door open, and the air inside thickened. The remnants of holiday cheer felt tainted, as if something sinister had overtaken the space. The glow from the tree illuminated a set of footprints leading towards the back of the room, and I followed them without thinking. The footprints were small, too small to be anyone in my family. The realization made my pulse race. "Who has been here?" I whispered, half to myself. I felt a chill creep down my spine as I knelt down to inspect them. They looked fresh, as if someone had just recently arrived. Suddenly, I heard a giggle, light and airy, echoing from behind the couch. My heart pounded in my chest as fear clawed at me. I stood up and stepped back, planning to escape. But before I could turn away, a flash of movement caught my eye. Something darted out from behind the couch that I barely had time to register what it was. A small figure burst into the light, no taller than my knee. It was another doll, this one crudely stitched and holding a frayed teddy bear. The doll's mouth moved, but there were no words, only laughter. Panic surged through me. I turned and ran, sprinting back toward the hallway, desperate to leave this place behind. I could feel the laughter chasing me, ringing in my ears. I reached the stairs, my legs feeling like jelly. When I made it to the top, I slammed the door to my room and leaned against it, shaky and breathless. But I wasn't safe yet. Then I heard it again, the whispers and giggles, now echoing through the walls of the house, wrapping around me like a shroud. I glanced down the hallway and froze. Something darted into my room, a blur of movement just out of sight. Someone was in the house. In the silence that followed, I held my breath. I couldn't tell if my heart was racing from adrenaline or if I was just terrified. I pressed my back against the door, hoping that whatever had slipped into my room wouldn't find me. I strained to listen, ears perked up like a startled animal. Nothing, just the faint hum of the old heater and the occasional creak of the house settling. I slowly exhaled, trying to calm down, when I suddenly heard a faint rustling. It was coming from the corner of my room, hidden in darkness. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel its presence. Then, as if on cue, the string of lights on my desk flickered. I turned my head, my eyes darting to the small string I had hung up for ambience. It pulsed gently, as though it were breathing. And then, just as quickly, the light went out completely, plunging me into shadows that I cursed to myself, feeling for my phone in the pocket of my pajama pants. The screen felt like a lifeline. I fumbled for it, clicking it on. The soft blue glow illuminated the immediate area, but it was still dark enough to hide whatever was lurking. That I swept the light across the room, scanning for any sign of the intrusion. My heart sank when I spotted something on my bed. It was that doll. The same one I had seen in the living room, grinning with its ridiculous stitched smile. Its little teddy bear was clutched tightly in its arms. "How did you get here?" I whispered, feeling ridiculous for talking to a doll. But I couldn't take my eyes off it. My instincts screamed that I was in danger, but my curiosity pulled me in. I pushed myself away from the door, inching toward the bed. As I reached for the doll, the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. "Help us! Help us!" It was as if the walls themselves were crying out with fevered desperation. I stumbled back, the phone shaking in my hand. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, breaking my concentration. I whipped around, terrified. I had to see what was happening. So against every rational thought in my head, I stepped into the hallway. With each step, the air felt thicker, heavier. I held my breath as I crept down the staircase, cautiously avoiding the creaky steps. My heart raced as I reached the bottom, the whispers still haunting, growing closer and more frantic. When I reached the last step, I was met with darkness. The living room stood in shadow. But there was someone casting a flicker of light through the darkness. I peeked around the corner, and then my breath caught in my throat. The Christmas tree lights were back on, now flashing erratically in a pattern that felt almost intentional. Beneath the tree, more small figures danced. I squinted, my blood running cold. I could see at least half a dozen dolls, each with their own frayed toys, moving in a way that suggested they weren't just inanimate. "Join us," one whispered, a voice clearer than the rest. That S when I realized they weren't just toys. They were watching me, beckoning me to come closer. That I felt a jolt of fear. What had I stumbled into? I took a step back, my mind racing. I had to get out of here. I turned to run back up the stairs. But the moment I did, the front door swung open with a loud bang. I froze, dread washing over me. Someone was coming inside. I pressed my back against the wall, heart pounding as I strained to hear footsteps approaching. The door swung open slowly, and shadows spilled into the living room. My breath hitched in my throat. I needed to hide, but where? The staircase felt like a death sentence, and the kitchen had no escape routes. I ducked behind the sofa, dimly aware of the faint glow from the Christmas tree. The dolls continued their strange dance, oblivious to the growing presence intruding in their realm. The figure stepped into the living room, shifting the light, and my eyes widened in disbelief. It was my older brother, Liam. "What the hell are you doing?" I blurted, half relieved, half terrified. Liam looked disoriented, his eyes darting from the dolls to the tree, his brow furrowing in confusion. I heard something crash upstairs. "What is going on?" Behind me, the dolls suddenly went still, their gazes shifting to my brother as if they had taken notice of an intruder. The air felt charged with tension. I couldn't tell if Liam was startled or angry. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping cautiously toward me. I couldn't find my voice. I was still wrapped in fear, the memories of the whispers nagging at the back of my mind. Then, without warning, the lights on the tree flickered once more, casting eerie shadows across the room. I felt a chill race down my spine. "I think it's the dolls," I whispered, unable to shake the dread that coiled in my stomach. They were moving. Liam chuckled nervously, brushing it off as a joke. "Dolls can't move, Jess. It's just a coincidence with the lights. This is a weird prank, right?" But it wasn't funny. I could feel the atmosphere shift heavy and oppressive as if the dolls were drawing power from our fear. "Look," I began, pointing at the dolls, but I froze. The dolls were slowly inching closer together, gathering in a huddle beneath the tree. Their eyes, once shot with innocence, reflected something sinister. "Do you see that?" I yelled, but Liam just cared about getting to the bottom of the noise. He dismissed me and turned to check the rest of the house, leaving me alone with the dolls that now looked more alive than ever. He stepped toward the hallway, and my panic escalated. I couldn't let him go alone into that darkness. I surged from behind the couch, but before I could catch up, the front door burst open again with a gust of wind, slamming against the wall. "No!" I shouted, but Liam was already gone. That I stood frozen, apprehension washing over me again as the dolls let loose a high-pitched giggle that echoed in the room. I could feel the tremors of impending chaos. I had to find Liam. I took a tentative step toward the hallway, and that's when I saw it, a dark silhouette at the end, blocking the light. Instinct kicked in, and I bolted. Just as I crossed into the hallway, I heard the voice again, louder and more insistent this time. "Help us! Help us!" I reached out my hand to grab the railing, but all I could think about was Liam. Where did he go? Then everything went dark. When I awoke, I was lying on the floor of the living room. Distant echoes of laughter faded, and light flooded in through the window. The Christmas tree twinkled with its garish colors, and the dolls lay scattered beneath it, motionless. A deep knot twisted my stomach as I slowly rose to my feet, my heart racing. The house felt eerily quiet now, too quiet for a place filled with family. "Liam?" I called, hoping my voice wouldn't just evaporate into the tense air. My answer came only as the low hum of silence, making my skin crawl. I stumbled to the front door, blinking against the bright winter sun. The chill hit me as I stepped outside. The world felt strangely unfamiliar, as if the house had spun its own reality while I was captive within. I paused on the threshold, scanning the driveway and the porch, but my brother was nowhere in sight. Panic surged again. He had gone through the door moments before. Where had he disappeared to? Unease settled in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened inside that house was far from over. I turned back to the entrance, hesitating to return to the chaos lurked unseen. Shadows danced ominously through the front window, and my breath came in quick, shallow bursts. "Liam!" I called again, louder this time, an urgent plead as if in response, the front door creaked open slowly on its own. I didn't move. Part of me wanted to flee, to run until my legs buckled beneath me, but another force told me I needed to know what I had walked away from. I stepped back inside, feeling the air shift. A cold breeze swirled through the hallway, stirring a scent of something sickly sweet. The dolls were back in place, arranged in a neat circle beneath the tree, their glossy eyes seemingly fixed on me. The floorboards groaned as I edged deeper into the house, my heart hammering in my chest. I paused when I reached the living room, noticing how the ambient light seemed dimmed, casting long shadows over familiar furniture. The laughter returned, this time a distant chorus, echoing from somewhere above. "Help us!" It was haunting, laced with desperation as the whispers wrapped around my head. With uncertainty, I climbed the staircase, each step creaking painfully under my weight. The higher I went, the more oppressive the air felt, closing in around me. I could hear movement, faint rustling flowed through the walls. I pushed open the door to my siblings' room. My heart dropped. Inside, the snow globe sat on the wooden table, now pulsating with light as if it had a heartbeat. Within its glass confines, my family was frozen in a joyous scene that filled me with dread. In an instant, an image shifted, faces melting away to reveal twisted beings, unrecognizable figures that mirrored my own. I gasped, and behind me, the door swung shut. I whipped around, feeling a presence seep into the room. "No," I whispered, dread rushing in like a flood. That's when I noticed my little brother's teddy bear, an untouched relic resting against the wall, a sign of innocence amidst insanity. "Liam." I called again, my voice barely clinging to hope. Help, came a voice, similar yet warped, echoing from deep within the snow globe. Before I could reach for it, the floor trembled beneath me, and the laughter grew louder, fuller, surrounding me. A blinding light erupted from the globe. I shielded my eyes as it engulfed the room in chaos. That's when I felt it, a heartbeat, strong and alive, pulsing through the air around me. I lurched backward, and suddenly, everything went dark. When the light faded again, I was alone, my heart racing, my breath ragged. No more snow globe, no dolls. Just an empty room filled with eerie silence. Beyond the walls, I could hear the familiar chime of the Christmas bells ringing faintly in the distance. That I stumbled back into the hallway and froze. Outside, the world felt wrong. The lawn lay blanketed in snow, untouched and pristine. No sounds of laughter, no sign of my family. I reached for my phone, desperately trying to connect with someone, but the screen flickered to life and died again. Something wasn't right. As I turned back toward the living room, the door cracked open, revealing Lenore. The fragile porcelain doll was about to beckon me again. There it stayed, watching, waiting. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something incomprehensible, trapped between time and memory, between the past and whatever awaited me. I still don't know if I truly escaped. The house felt alive, and somehow, it still called to me, leaving me wondering if my family was ever really gone or if they were trapped, just like Johnny and I were, caught in an eternal dance of shadows and whispers. I never stepped foot back into that house again, but sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear them, the echoes of lost children, forever calling for help.